I hope the screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am.
So since morning you are learning about, hematopoietic stem cells. You are talking about stem cells, their features, their characteristics, right? So do you remember what are stem cells? Why are we talking about stem cells and their characteristics and their applications?
Ma'am,
Yes, Multazim?
yeah, actually, stem cells, these are the special cells that have the ability to develop in different types of cells in the body.
Yes.
Like
Anyone
they
else
help
who wants
in,
to add on? Yes, Multazim, correct. Anyone who wants to add on what Multazim just discussed?
they help in maybe like growth, development, repair in the body, and
Yes,
so on and so
Multazim.
on.
Well said. Anyone who wants to add on?
Sorry, ma'am, what was the question?
So I
I
asked if
just
you remember about.
entered right now.
Okay, no issues, right? So I just asked if you remember about stem cells that you have been, we have been discussing about stem cells since morning.
Okay, stem cells are the cells which are precursors of all other cells, and they have the characteristic of regeneration and becoming other cells.
Okay. Okay, so the topic for the day is types of hematopoietic stem cells. Like you already studied about stem cells, what are the features of stem cells? So I'm going through the types of hematopoietic stem cells, right? So stem cells, mentioned, are undifferentiated cells. That these cells can divide by mitosis to produce more stem cells that are because they have the ability to self-renew. Right? They are found in multicellular organism. So what do you mean by undifferentiated cells? Means before differentiated into the specialized cells, they go through a series of development, right? And then at the last they become differentiated cells. Means differentiated, or you can say they become specialized, right? Precursor of one particular cell. So there are two major types of stem cells in mammals. That is, first, embryonic stem cells that are isolated from the inner cell mass of blastocytes, and another is adult stem cells, which are found in various type of tissues in adult organisms, right? So here is a diagram which shows what is a stem cell. So you can see these stem cells basically helps to reduce inflammation, right? If induced in the body, fight apoptosis, that means the cell death, sudden cell death, right? Differentiate into multiple tissues, and it has ability for self replications also, right? So moving forward, so some stem cells are recognized from other cell types by three major characteristics as follows. So these stem cells are undifferentiated cells that we have been discussing, capable of renewing themselves throughout cell division even after long periods of inactivity. So they have the potential to become specialized cells such as muscle cells, blood cells, brain cells that we discuss in the morning sessions, right? So that means these stem cells has the ability to be capable of potentially being able to be become specialized cells in our body, right? Whenever a person has some sort of disease, or they have been diagnosed with some disorder, so sometimes the therapy, or you can say the cure, is to induced stem cells, right? These stem cells basically, whenever what particular tissue they've been induced to, so they have the ability to become that particular cell type only. If let us say that these stem cells are induced into the liver, so somebody has liver cancer, right? So they are induced into the liver, so because they are stem cells, so they have the ability to become liver cells when they get matured, right? So types of adult stem cells, we talked about embryonic stem cells. So these cells are derived from embryos at a development stage before the time of implantation. Like I already mentioned that, these stem cells are the undifferentiated cells. That means they, go from a series of development stages. After that, they become developed, or you can say, mature blood cell. So these cells are derived from embryos at a development stage before the time of, implantation, would normally occur in the uterus, and can give rise to cells from all three embryonic germ layers, that is ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. And whereas adult stem cells are undifferentiated cells found throughout the body that divide to replenish, dying cells and regenerate damaged tissue. They are also known as somatic stem cells, which can be found in children as well as adults. That is why they are known as adult stem cells, right? So if we talk about the difference between embryonic stem cells and adult stem cells, right? So which particular technique is better when you have to collect these stem cells? Is it safer to collect from embryo or the adult stem cells? So it is always said that adult stem cells are safer to collect, right? Because if you are collecting stem cell from an embryo, right? So because the first line if you read about is that it should be collected before the development stage, before the time of implantation you have to collect it from the embryo, right? That is not destroyed. So right, so stem cells that are adult will be undifferentiated, but because they are matured, right, we can use it. We know the if there are any cells which cannot be differentiated, or any other sort of error that may comes up. So if there are adult stem cells and embryonic stem cells, so adult stem cells are more used safely, right? So types of adult stem cells. So bone marrow hematopoietic stem cells. So bone marrow hematopoietic stem cells. So hematopoietic stem cells are the early precursor cells which give rise to all the blood cell types that include both the myeloid and lymphoid lineages. You might have heard about myeloid and lymphoid lineages in hematology, right? So bone marrow stromal stem cells, that memory stem cells, provide the source of cells for growth of memory glands, right? The source of cells for growth and memory glands, right? So in females, basically. So neural stem cells, so existence of these stem cells in the adult brain following the discovery and the process of neurogenesis. And another is olfactory adult stem cells, isolated from the human olfactory mucosal cells, and adipose derived adult stem cells. These cells have also been isolated from human fat tissues, right? So hematopoiesis is the production of all types of blood cells, including formation, their development, and their differentiation. So it occurs in yolk sac, then in the liver, and lastly in the bone marrow. So in the normal situation, hematopoiesis in adults occurs in the bone marrow and lymphatic tissues. So hematopoiesis is the production of all types of blood cells that will be what we say immature cells. And after that comes hematopoiesis. That is the same term for hematopoiesis. And then we have an cell type that we just discussed, that there are three types of hematopoietic stem cells, right? So these stem cells are found in the bone marrow and lymphatic tissues in adults. You can see there are different cells of myeloid and lymphoid series that we can see in the image itself, right? So embryonic stem cells, if we talk about the source, derived from the developing embryo during early stages of embryogenesis, and the location would be yolk sac, right? So its role is to contribute to the initial, wave of hematopoiesis. That means formation of blood cells during embryonic development, right? So this embryonic hematopoietic stem cells plays a crucial role, right, during the embryonic development in the formation of blood and immune system. And it also if you talk about the roles of that, it is basically the initiation of hematopoiesis. So your embryonic hematopoietic stem cells contribute to the first hematopoiesis during embryonic development, and they are involved in the generation of the initial pool of blood cell. Initial means the first stage of blood cells that will later give rise to various cell types in the bloodstream. That means when comes in the blood flow, they become differential, right? And formation of blood islands also, in the formation of yolk sac, which is one of the early sites of blood cell development in the embryo. Then also migration to different tissues. So if they migrate migrate to various tissues during embryonic development, including the aorta, gonad, also termed as AGM region, and fetal liver. These tissues serve as additional sites for hematopoiesis as the embryo develop. Right, then the generation of primitive blood cells. So these cells, embryonic hematopoietic stem cells, give rise to primitive blood cells, which are the earliest blood cells formed during embryonic development. These cells include primitive erythrocytes, erythrocytes and other cell types that are necessary for the developing embryo circulations and oxygen supply. Right, then a transition to adult hematopoiesis. So as development progresses, the role of embryonic hematopoietic stem cells and adult or somatic hematopoietic stem cells takes over the responsibility of maintaining hemopoiesis or hematopoiesis throughout an individual's life. Then if we talk about adult or adult stem cells or somatic hematopoietic stem cells. So the source would be found, they are found in various tissues in the adult body, and the location predominantly will be the bone marrow, but small population are also present in peripheral blood and other tissues, right? So the role would be because they are responsible for the continuous production of blood cell throughout an individual's life, these adult stem cells. So they can differentiate into both myeloid and lymphoid progenitor cells, giving rise to various blood cell types, right? These are the precursors. So hematopoietic stem cells have the unique ability, like we mentioned, to self-renew, maintaining their population and differentiating into different cell types, right? To ensure a constant supply of blood cells for the body needs. So the study and understanding of these stem cells are very crucial in medical line, and including bone marrow transplantation and other disorders and diseases, right? In some disorders, this is the only way that we can renew the cells. So these adult or somatic hematic cells has a role in humans body to renew themselves and be a particular cell type, right? So adult or somatic hematopoietic cells also play a central ongoing role in maintaining the integrity of the blood and immune system throughout the individual's life, right? So it gives continuous blood cell production, the self renewal property that we discussed, differentiation into progenitor cells, then myelopoiesis and lymphopoiesis, right? So they contribute to both myelopoiesis, that is formation of myeloid cells like neutrophils, monocytes and platelets, and lymphopoiesis also, that means formation of lymphoid cells like T cells, B cells, natural killer cells, all the immune cells, right? So it also helps to maintenance of immune system. So this is another critical role in the maintenance and regeneration of the immune system. So they give rise to lymphocytes, which are the key components and adaptive immune response, including your T cells and B cells. They also give response to infections and injuries, like injuries or other stresses. So these undergo enhanced proliferation, that means multiplication and differentiation, to produce the necessary immune cells needed to combat or fight the pathogens, right? And next one is bone marrow transplantation. So adult cells are the primary target for bone marrow transplantation, right? So as moving forward, we discuss this. So all blood cells are divided into three important lineages, that is erythroid cells, are the oxygen carrying red blood cells, right? That is if you talk about the prefix, that is erythro, that means related to the red blood cells only. So they are the oxygen carrying red blood cells. Then they are lymphocytes that are derived from common lymphoid progenitors. So the lymphoid lineage is primarily composed of T cells and B cells, the type of white blood cells, right? Then myelocytes, which include granulocytes, megakaryocytes, macrophages, and are derived from common myeloid progenitors, are involved in such diverse roles as innate immunity, adaptive immunity, and blood clotting, right? So if you talk about myeloid cells or erythrocytes, red blood cells. So the role is to the cells that carry oxygen, right? So they transport oxygen from the lungs to the rest of the body and carbon dioxide from their body to the lungs for exhalation, right? Then there are granulocytes, neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils. So they have their specific role for phagocytosis, that is engulfing and destroying the bacteria or foreign particle and other microorganisms. Eosinophils, involved in the immune response again and against parasite and allergic reactions. Then there are basophils, which releases histamine, and other substances that involved in the inflammation and other allergic, responses, right? Then there are monocyte, transforms into macrophages. Then there are platelets, also known as thrombocytes, right? The role, that are essential for blood clotting and wound healing, right? They form a plug at the site of injury and release, some clotting factors to stop the bleeding. Then there are lymphoid cells, basically your T cells and B cells. So there are then T cells, you might have heard about helper T cells that coordinate with, immune response by activating other immune cells. Then there are cytotoxic T cells that destroys and, infected or damaged cells. So if there are damaged and infected cells in your body, cytotoxic T cells comes and destroy them. Then there are memory T cells. So memory means they remember. So they remember previous encounters with any pathogen for a faster response. So if your body, had a particular infection from a particular, organism, so they remember the previous encounters with those organisms, and in future if you get infected with the same organism, right? So these memory T cells helps to, evoke immune response much faster than the previous one, because your immunity has been already made, and the immune system will evoke, as soon as, possible. So B cells, plasma cells, produce antibodies that recognize and neutralize specific, pathogens. And there are memory B cells, right? There is a prefix that is memory, so they remember previous encounters with pathogens for a faster antibody response upon re-exposure to that specific, organism or microorganism or any infection or disorder, right? Then there are natural killer cells that we talked about that recognize and destroy infected or abnormal cell, like, common example would be cancer cells. So these, all these hematopoietic cells are produced in the bone marrow itself, and they are very crucial for maintaining the body's immune response or immune function, oxygen carrying capacity, blood clotting, and fighting the, microorganism or any other foreign particle. So the balance and proper functioning of these cell types are essential for overall health and well-being, right, of individuals, because, in bone marrow they are distributed in such a manner that, they keep a balance in our body. So what will happen if we have, imbalance of all these cells? So other cell line will be suppressed because of the, more than, because of the higher, because of the, sorry for interrupting. Okay, so, if one cell line is suppressed, what will happen? Other cell line will get affected by that, right? So other cell line, if one cell line is suppressed, so other cell line will be in increased number, right? So that keeps, that will be imbalance in our body, right? So that is why the stem cells should be in a proper, quantity, or we say there is a, neutral balance between all these cell lines, so that there is no imbalance in the body. Moving forward, so formation of RBCs, erythrocytes. So these red blood cell production takes place in the bone marrow itself under the control of the hormone EPO, and this hormone is produced in the kidney in response to the decreased oxygen, right? As in anemia and hypoxia, absence of oxygen. So these RBC production requires adequate supplies of substrates, mainly iron, vitamin B12, folate, right? So these RBCs survive about 120 days, right? So the, survival time for the RBCs is 128 days, or lifespan of the RBCs is 120 days. So they then lose their cell membranes and are largely cleared from the circulation by the phagocytic cells of the spleen, liver, and bone marrow. So once the RBCs completes their life cycle. So they are, they lose their cell membranes and are cleared from the circulation, blood circulation, by the phagocytic cells of the spleen, liver, and bone marrow, right? Then talking about the formation of platelets. So these platelets are produced during hematopoiesis, right? Formation of blood cells from common myeloid progenitor cells in the bone marrow itself, which then distributed or differentiate into pro-mega karyocytes, and then into finally megakaryocytes. Then these megakaryocytes stay in the bone marrow and are thought to produce protoplatelets within their cytoplasm, which are released in cytoplasmic extensions upon cytokine stimulate. The protoplatelets then break up into hundreds of platelets that circulate throughout the bloodstream. The tiny platelets that you see, observe, in slides. So they are the protoplatelets that broke up into the hundreds of platelets, right? That then stay in the circulation, blood circulations. You can see in the diagram itself. So from the hematocytoblast, the formation of megakaryoblast happens. Then from the megakaryoblast, pro-megakaryocyte, and from the pro-megakaryocyte, the megakaryocyte developed, and from one megakaryocyte, there will be number of platelets that will be, circulating in the bloodstream. Then all white blood cells are produced and derived from hematopoietic stem cells in the bone marrow itself. Leukocytes are found throughout the body, including the blood and lymphatic system. So all these white blood cells have nucleus, which distinguish them from other blood cells that do not have, nucleus. So two pairs of major categories classify them, either by structure, that is granulocyte and agranulocyte, and or by cell division lineage, that is myeloid cells or lymphoid cells. So granulocytes, we know that what are, different granulocytes, and there are, two types of agranulocytes for the white blood cells. So this is one such a diagram that shows, from the precursor cell, how the differentiation of different cells happens from the multipotential hematopoietic stem cells, that is hemoblast. So two categories, that is common myeloid progenitor and the lymphoid progenitor, develops. From myeloid progenitor series, there would be megakaryocyte, erythrocyte, mast cell, and myeloblast. And from lymphoid series, there would be NK cell, natural killer cell, and lymphocyte, small lymphocyte. That small lymphocyte, give rise to T lymphocyte and B lymphocyte, T and B cells. And finally, from B lymphocyte, there will be generation of plasma cells. And from myeloblast, there would be your granulocytes, basophils, neutrophils, eosinophils, and agranulocyte, that is monocyte and lymphocyte. So then macrophages, that is for engulfing the microorganism or any foreign particles. And from the myeloid progenitor, you can see there would be megakaryocytes also that give rise to thrombocyte, that we just discussed, that these cells, here was a diagram that from hemocytoblast that give rise finally to megakaryocyte, that gives rise to, or double, the number of platelets that you see, small fragments in blood circulation, would come from megakaryocyte. From one megakaryocyte, there will be many fragments of platelets that you see, observe in, your bloodstream, that is thrombocytes, right, class? Any questions? So, we talked about the types of stem cells that we have. I don't have any. Yes. Have you understood any question? I'm looking at the chat box.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
You talked about the adults and the other
your
one,
voice,
but my question.
Something with your voice, Faith. Not very
Okay.
clear.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but your voice is, breaking. Can't hear you clearly.
Okay. Hello, ma'am. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Faith, but still breaking. I don't know why. You can mute and then unmute yourself. Mute once and unmute yourself.
Okay, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, Faith.
Okay. So you talked about the adult one, and I wanted, my question was the adult stem cells. There is this one which is adipose stem cells. On the first lecture, we learned that there are these cells called epithelial cells. I wanted to know if they're the same. Do they work on the surfaces of the epithelial cells like skin, or are they different from the ones you were talking about?
Faith, can you write it in the chat box?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. If anyone else has the question, please either speak on to the unmute yourself and speak, or you can write it in the chat box. Faith, fitting for your question only.
Done, ma'am.
Done, but I haven't received. Your voice is still breaking, Faith. And I haven't received your message in the chat box. Have you sent it in the WhatsApp group or this chat box? Okay. Okay, received, Faith. Let me read your question. On adults, stem cells, adipose. Derived stem cells, are they the precursor of skin cells, epithelial cells, or different? On stem cells, adipose, the precursor of skin cells. They are different, Faith. If you observe, you see the name of the cells only, adipose stem cells, that are originated from the adipose stem cells only. And if you talk about the epithelial stem cells, they are you know originate from epithelial cells only, epithelial tissues, which line the surface and cavities of our body, that forming barriers between different body compartments. And the properties, if you talk about the properties would be different also. So the adipose stem cells are a type of stem cells, which means they have the potential to differentiate into various cell types, right? Such as adipocytes, that is fat cells, right? Cartilage cells, bone forming cells. Whereas if you talk about the application of epithelial cells, that would be totally different from the adipose stem cells. So because they are present in the lining, so they give rise to differentiated cells that make up the various epithelial layers, like the skin, GIT tract lining, respiratory tract lining. So they are, epithelial stem cells again are essential for the continuous renewal and repair of the epithelial tissues, whereas adipose stem cells for used for the adipose stem cells. So they are different. Their properties are different, their applications are different, and their origin is also different.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you, Faith. If anyone else has any question, please drop it in the chat box. I'm looking at the chat box for another 1 minute. Please let me know if you have any question, if you have not understood anything, or you can unmute yourself and speak. Okay, so I'm assuming you do not have any question. So
Okay. Thank you so much, Shanoo ma'am, for your insightful lecture
thank you so
on
much, sir.
blood stem cells and their properties. Thank you so much, ma'am. And the students, please fill the attendance sheet in the group, okay, of this particular lecture, 1 o'clock lecture. And at 2 o'clock, please join again. I will send the link, okay. And Miss Neha ma'am will take the class at 2 o'clock. Okay, please join back at 2 o'clock. Thank you very much. Please fill the attendance sheet and give the feedback. Thank you so much. Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much, Shanoo ma'am. You can, yeah. I'm ending this meeting. Thank you.